Hey everybody, today we're going to have fun making this fall mug rug. We're going to do some piecing and some raw edge applique. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do to make this mug rug is cut 6 strips of green fabric. Of course, you can change the colors if you want to. Today I'm using green. These strips will measure 1¼ inches wide and 7½ inches long. And then we're going to arrange them in the order that you want to sew them together. Once you have your placement all right, we're going to bring this over to the sewing machine and we're piecing these 6 strips with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Try and stay as straight as possible. These are a little bit thinner strips we're working with today. And I'm just going to do some chain piecing. We're going to connect all 6 pieces right here at the sewing machine before we press them. Today I'm using my open toe foot, just hoping that during the video you might be able to see a little bit better. I try to keep them in order the same way that I laid them out. And I'm just finger pressing these and just connecting all of these 6 pieces. I know one thing, I have missed doing the lives with you guys. I miss y'all so much. I hope you're having a fantastic week. We will get back to doing the lives as soon as we return back from Vermont. I have some really fun projects lined up, so stay tuned. Once you have all 6 pieces sewn together, we're going to bring this over to the pressing board. You can press these seams all to one side if you want. Today, I'm just going to open up those seams and press each one. You just want to make sure you're being really careful not to stretch this piece and make it a little bit wonky. It would be easy to do with these thinner strips of fabric. Just trying to be really careful, opening up those seams. We're going to press this piece nice and flat. Once we're done with that, we're going to cut out the pumpkin template. And we're going to layer that on our brown fabric. I like to use a little glue stick just to hold that paper in place while I'm cutting out the shape of the pumpkin. You'll notice it has some dotted lines to the right side. That's going to help us line up the placement of the 6 pieces of fabric we just sewn together. It's probably easier if you add a little bit of glue stick to the edges. We have some curved edges we're cutting out with this pumpkin. Once you get all the extra brown fabric cut away and we have our pumpkin shape, we're going to bring in the 6 pieces of green fabric and we're going to line the pumpkin up on the left side of our stripped pieces. I'm going to use a little bit of a glue stick here, flip over that pumpkin, and I'm just going to glue baste the brown fabric right onto our strips. I'm going to bring that over to the iron and just dry that glue. Once it's nice and dry, we're going to bring this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew down the brown fabric right on these green strips. Today I'm just using a little bit of a looser zigzag stitch. If you use a satin stitch, I highly recommend using a good medium weight tearaway stabilizer underneath of everything to help stabilize those stitches and keep your green strips from puckering up. The zigzag stitch is a little bit looser, and so I don't need any stabilizer for that. Now we're going to bring in our batting and we're going to lay that down first. We're going to bring our backing fabric and lay that on the batting with the pretty side up. And then we're going to lay the top of our mug rug with the pretty side facing down. I'm going to use a couple pins and just pin baste this right in place. Once it's basted, we're going to bring this over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all the way around, making sure to leave a good size opening. At your opening, you want to make sure you do a back stitch at the beginning and at the end to help lock those stitches. And I'm going all the way around the perimeter of the top of our mug rug using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You'll see I'm going to just trim off this extra of the green strip. This is the part that tucks right up underneath of that pumpkin shape at the bottom. Now I'm just being careful to follow the little curves of the pumpkin shape. It's a little bit harder to see because now we have brown fabric on brown fabric, but I think you can see that pretty good. I'm going to tell you, this mug rug is the perfect size for your desk. Put a little mug of coffee, tea, hot cocoa, and a snack. What I like about this is it's not only great for Halloween, but it's fall. So yeah, this could stay out throughout the whole entire fall season, not just Halloween. We're back here at the opening. I'm going to do a back stitch. We're going to take this away, remove the pins, and cut all the extra away. I like to leave a little bit of extra at that opening. Just helps me tuck that opening into the inside of the mug rug. I'm leaving a little bit of a smaller seam allowance all the way around. And then I like to trim off that extra batting at the opening. Now we're going to reach in and grab the right side and flip this. I like to take my fingers and just run my fingers along that seam allowance all the way around the curved edges of the pumpkin. I really like to take my finger and just make sure those curves pop out. Not sure if you can hear my washer in the background. It's laundry day. Once you get it all popped out, you're just going to bring this over to the iron. Make sure to tuck in that opening and give that a good press. Once it's pressed, we're going to bring it back to the sewing machine, and I like to do a top stitch right close to that edge all the way around. It's probably like a good healthy 1/8 of an inch little seam allowance all the way around. That's going to close our opening and give a nice finish to our mug rug. Now that we have that done, it's time to start our applique. Today I'm using Heat and Bond Light, and I'm going to be tracing the pumpkin templates. If you're using freezer paper, you'll want to flip your page over and trace from the back side using a light pad or a window. Just tracing right on the line each one of these shapes for the pumpkins. I'm going to cut away the extra Heat and Bond Light and save that in my stash. And then we're going to take this over and fuse it to the back side of some orange fabric and cut out those shapes. Once we have them cut out, we can go ahead and fuse them in place. So I'm here at the pressing board, and I'm just going to lay out these orange pieces for the pumpkin. I think that orange really pops off of that brown fabric. That looks so nice. We're just going to fuse that down. Whatever type of fusible you're using, you don't have to use Heat and Bond Light, but make sure to follow the directions for whatever type you're using. And now we're going to stitch this down. Now, if stitching down the applique is something that's going to keep you from making this mug rug, you could always use a permanent fusible product like the Heat and Bond in the red package. Today I'm using a pretty small little blanket stitch, and I'm going to stitch down each one of these pieces. I'll bring you along for the first one, and I'm using some brown thread. I think that looks really nice. The blanket stitch has been one of my favorite in the last couple of months for stitching down applique. I think it looks so cute. It almost looks like it's hand done. I think that touch really adds a little bit more character to it. But of course you could use any stitch in your sewing machine to sew down these pieces. I really don't know that you could pick a wrong one. Sewing down the applique at this part of the mug rug not only secures your applique pieces in place forever, but it also acts as your quilting for the mug rug as well. So you're going to stitch down all of your pumpkin pieces, and then, well, this part is optional, but I'm going to do a stitch in the ditch between the green little strips of fabric. I think a little meandering stitch in the green stripes would look adorable too. Ooh, how pretty would this be if you used fall colors instead of the green? Wow, maybe I'll make a second one of these. That would be gorgeous. Just have one more seam to quilt on the top of this mug rug. And once we're done with that, we're going to make the little stem for our pumpkin. I just have some jump stitches to trim away. To make our stem, we're going to lay down a thin layer of batting and 2 pieces of brown fabric. Pretty sides facing each other, lay that right on your batting. Then secure the little template for your stem right on top, and we're just going to use that template as a guide, and we're going to sew all the way around the stem shape, making sure to leave an opening. And when I did this little tiny piece, I reduced the length of my stitch just to keep it nice and tight all the way around. Make sure to backstitch at the opening. And then we're going to trim away all the extra brown fabric. And no lie, y'all, turning the little stem for this pumpkin right side out is probably, or was probably the hardest part of making this mug rug for me. I always struggle turning things right side out anyway. This is a little bit of a smaller piece, but I did manage to do it. It just took some patience. We tucked that opening right in, and now we're going to bring this over to the sewing machine. We're going to do a top stitch, just like we did for the mug rug, all the way around. Once that top stitch is done, we're going to bring over the mug rug. We're going to lay that right on top. And then you can just secure this with a hand stitch. I'm going to do it with the sewing machine. You could use all kinds of stitches to sew this down. I'm just going to use a straight stitch and just stitch right in that stitch, that top stitch that I closed everything up with. I'm just running right in that same top stitch. And that sews down the stem of our pumpkin. I think that adds such character to this mug rug. I think it's adorable. And that finishes up our mug rug, y'all. Look how cute that is with the little stem hanging off of there. I would say this is a pretty easy mug rug to make, especially if you're not new to applique However, the applique pieces are fairly large and pretty easy to stitch down, so I would say this is a good starter project if you're just starting out with applique. I hope you've had so much fun with this pattern. I would love to see what you make over on Creative Crew. And I'll see y'all really soon. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Bye, everybody.